Hey guys, it's Ryan. Today I'm going to be showing you how to knit socks. Socks can seem rather intimidating. They're probably just below a sweater on terms of massive project, but really they're not that complicated. It's kind of similar to knitting mittens or gloves, except these are for your feet. All you're going to need for this project are 5 double-pointed needles, and as you can see, I've already started a little bit. So if you don't know how to knit in the round, check out my other videos where I go over knitting in the round on double-pointed needles, because I'm not gonna do that at all actually in this one. I'm gonna start out with a bit of the cuff and then just work from there, because the main part that is, I think, difficult with a sock is getting it to turn, do the heel, and then finish off with the toes. So that's what I'm gonna be showing you how to do today. You guys are gonna be blown away by how easy this is. Socks are honestly, it's just really easy. It's just a series of steps, and once you have that down, then you're free to make whatever kind of sock you want, which is kind of like most things in life. So what you should have by now is you've knitted in the round to create a cuff. So for this one, all I did was, here's the end of my yarn, I did a 1x1 ribbing, so that's just knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, all the way around to make this kind of elastic cuff here. Also, this is 40 stitches. Most socks are going to be 40 stitches, unless you have enormous feet or tiny feet, then you can modify that as you want. I would say probably 20 stitches or 15 stitches is good for like a baby sock, but 40 will work for pretty much anyone. So I've got 40 stitches on my double pointed needles, and the first part that we come to now that we've finished the cuff, which is just a straight thing that your foot is going to go into, you're going to want to knit the heel. So how to do that is at the beginning of your round, so we've gone all the way around a couple times here to build up the cuff to the length that you want, and I've stopped right before a new round. So here is my working yarn, and then straight down below is the beginning of the round. So here's the tail of the yarn. What you're going to do is have 20 stitches on one needle, so there's 20 stitches here, and then 10 stitches on the other two needles. So there's 10 on this one, 10 on this one, equaling 40 stitches in total. To build up the heel, we're only going to focus on these 20 stitches that are on this needle right now. So I'm going to knit all the way down and then flip it around and purl all the way back, and then knit all the way down, purl all the way back, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, all the way until we get the length of the heel that we want. So probably about to here, just a couple of inches, which would be, I would say, probably 10 or 12 rounds. We'll see when we get there what it looks like. And as for these two guys, we're just going to ignore them entirely. Just make sure that they don't slip out of the stitches, but they should be pretty sturdy. So I'm going to take my yarn, take my needle, and just start knitting all the way down this row. And something that you can do with the heel, which I'm not going to do for this one since I'm going to keep it simple, is you can change the stitch of the heel. Some people like to do, it's called the Eye of Partridge stitch. Basically, you're just slipping every other stitch to make a thicker sort of fabric. People like the thicker fabric because if you look at some socks, the heel will be thicker than the rest of the sock, just because your heel is something that, you know, you walk around along a lot. But for this one, I'm just going to keep it simple. I kind of like the look of straight stockinette stitch, so I'm not going to do anything fancy. But feel free to get creative with your heel, and maybe you want to do a braid or a cable or something fancy like that. So I've knit all the way down on that heel. Instead of continuing with the rest of the round, all I'm going to do is turn it and purl all the way back. So purl all these 20 stitches back to the start. And these two needles are just going to be neglected for quite a while actually. So I'm going to flip my yarn and I'm going to start to purl. So that's going to continue with the stockinette stitch on the heel. So purl all the way back. Cue the fast forward video. Now I've purled all the way down on that needle. Once you've purled it, you're going to flip it back around, and then, as you can guess, we are just going to knit all the way back again, then flip it again, and purl all the way back. So that is going to build up the heel. So you can already actually see there's a bit of an increase here. So this side is taller than this side. And as you keep going, this will keep growing out to form what is going to be the heel. So keep knitting your heel to the desired length. I'm going to knit for maybe about 5 or 10 more rows, and then I'll meet you back here. Now we're back, and here's what you should have so far. So these 2 needles with 10 stitches on them should have remained motionless, and as you can see, they are kind of stunted because of that. They are only as long as the cuff was, but on our 3rd needle with the 20 stitches, you should have built up the heel with just the stockinette stitch or whatever stitch that you want to make for the heel. So for this one, I would say it's about 2.5 inches long, 2.5 inches longer than the rest of the work. I always say I'm going to count the number of rows I do, but I always lose track. I could count them right now, but I'm not going to. I think it's about 15 or 20 rows, I think, that I did. But basically it's about 2.5. It's enough to stick your heel in and for it to go like that, basically. So that was easy. Now this is the hardest part of knitting a sock, and this is what turns off a lot of people, and that is the actual curve in the heel. So right now we've just got this long flap for the heel. What we need to do is make it go horizontal. So what we're going to create is an L shape, basically. And to do that, you do this bizarre thing that's called turning the heel. So flip your work over, and if your yarn is not like this, knit another row so it gets like this. You basically want to be facing the purl side of your work, the inside of the sock, with your yarn right here ready to start a new row on the quote-unquote wrong side of the work. So if you need to, knit another row to get to this point. So what we're going to do is very strange, and there's no real technique to explain it. It's just a pattern that you're going to have to get familiar with. What we're going to do, in essence, is we're going to purl all the way down here, but we're going to stop to about here, and we're going to purl 2 stitches together, and then purl 1 more stitch, and then stop. But before we finish the row, we're going to flip it and knit back. But then we're going to stop to about here, knit 2 stitches together, and then flip it again, and then purl back. So you're going to be creating kind of like a triangle pattern of getting smaller and smaller, and it's going to pull in the work, and it's going to create this kind of bubble where your heel is going to go. You might be watching this thinking, what kind of socks are we making? But trust me, it's going to work out great, and it's going to look like a sock. So let's get started with that. So purl 12 stitches on this first row. So just follow along with me. There's honestly no easy explanation for it. Just knit 12. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Make sure these other needles don't fall out. 11 and 12. We've purled 12. Now what we're going to do is we're going to purl 2 stitches together. So grab 2 stitches and purl them together, which I did not do right. I need to do it like this. So grabbing 2 stitches, purling together, and then purl 1 more stitch, and then stop. So you should have 5 stitches left on this left needle, but we're not going to finish purling this row. What we're going to do is very strange. You're going to flip your work very carefully, and we are going to knit now. You're going to knit with this needle. You don't need to introduce another needle or anything. What we're going to do now is just start knitting down this row, but we're going to slip the first stitch. If you don't know what that is, it's okay. Just stick your needle into the stitch as if you're going to purl it, and instead of doing anything with it, just flip it off. I know, it feels really weird, but that's basically a slip stitch. So you slip that one off, and then we're going to knit 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we've gotten to this side. We're going to knit 2 stitches together now. So grab 2 stitches, knit them together, and then knit 1 more stitch. So we've done what we did on the purl side. We've knit almost to the end, but then we've knit 2 together and then knit 1 more, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches left on your left hand needle. Okay? If you can see a pattern in that, then that is the pattern you can follow. We're going to keep doing that again. So flip the work again onto the purl side. You're not going to finish that row, and we're going to do the same thing. So put the yarn in the back of the work, and we're going to purl. So in this case, we're going to purl 6. So purl 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Purl 1 more, so you've purled 7 stitches in total, and then you should be back at that gap. So here's the gap where we combined 2 stitches together, and then we did a skip. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're going to purl these 2 stitches together. You're always going to want to combine the 2 stitches where there's a bit of a gap here. You see that? So take those 2, purl together, and then purl 1 more, and then we're going to turn the work. So you should have 3 stitches on the left hand needle now. Now what we're going to do is turn the work again and do the same thing with the knit side. So flip the yarn back and knit again. So 1. I should have been slipping these stitches. Oops. If you care, go back to this one and slip that stitch, that first one in the row. It's not a huge deal if you're not slipping the first stitch, but it's what you're supposed to do. But knit all the way again down this row. We're going to stop to this gap. You can see where there's a gap in the stitches that was formed. That's what we're going to knit to. So knit, knit, knit. Once you get to the gap, take those 2 stitches and knit them together like that. And then knit 1 more. So now we have the same thing. We've got 3 stitches on the left-hand needle, flip the work, and do the purl side. You're going to keep doing this until there's 12 stitches in total. Right now we have 16 stitches, so we're going to keep doing it a couple more rows. So this is the purl side. Slip the first stitch. I always forget, so now you just slip it off, and now we start knitting, or purling, sorry. This is the most confusing part, I'm so sorry, but we're almost there. So purl, purl, purl. You're going to purl until we get to that gap where we've combined a stitch. So the gap here is right there. So purl, purl, purl. Okay, we're at the gap. Combine those 2 stitches by purling them together, slip them off, and then purl 1 more stitch, and you should have 1 stitch left on this needle. We are not going to purl it. It is so tempting to purl that last stitch, but you're not going to. You're going to flip it around and do the knit side. So slip the first one, and then continue knitting until we get to almost the end where we've got that gap. You're still probably thinking, what the heck is this even doing? But trust me, in the end, you'll see the heel, I promise. So we've knit down to the gap. Combine those 2 stitches, knit, and then knit 1 more, and you should have 1 more stitch on the left-hand needle. Don't knit it, flip it around, do the purl side. We're almost finished, so I'm going to slip the first one, and then purl all the way down. Purl it all the way down. We've got this gap with the 2 stitches. You are going to purl them together, and this time everything should come off of the left-hand needle. So you've purled them together, flip that out. So now you've knit off those ones, so that's okay. And now we can knit all the way down this row and then knit together those last 2 stitches for that last gap. So knit all the way down. And here's the last one, which is the gap on the very last 2. So just knit those 2 stitches together. And now look what you have. You have a heel. You've got this cool bump. Can you see it? Kind of? Yes? Was it worth it? I hope so. Look at that nice little curve that it does right here. It looks better in real life, I promise you. But the heel of your foot will thank me for doing that for you. So you should have 12 stitches now on this needle that used to have 20. And what we're going to do now is combine it with the 2 stitches, or the 2 needles that had 10 stitches on them. The hard part, I promise you, was turning the heel. The next parts are strange. It's a weird type of knitting, but it's not as complicated as what we just did with the turning the heel. If your heel didn't work out as well as you would have hoped, or if you don't have 12 stitches, that's fine. You can still continue as it is. It might just be a little bit of a nice throwaway sock. Or you can always just go back and try again. Feel free to rewind the video as many times as you need, or go find a better video, because I'm sure there's other people that have explained this better than I can. What we're going to do now is combine the heel with the rest of the sock to bring it together like this. And to do that, just do what I'm going to tell you to do. Basically, there's no easy way to explain it. What we need to do is bring these stitches in this heel together with these stitches to create kind of this corner piece. So to do that, we're going to pick up 11 stitches along this ridge. Take the needle that has the 12 stitches on it with your knitting, with the yarn in the back, and you're ready to knit. What you're going to do is take the needle and dip it into one of the V's that's along the ridge of this, the long side here of the heel. And we're just going to pick up a stitch. So take the needle and slip it under one of the V's that's along the edge, and then do a knit, and then pull that through. So that's 1. And then do that again. You're going to want to do that 11 times. So dip it down along the ridge, and it's okay if you don't grab a V. Sometimes you can just grab a loop. Grab it through, and that's 2. So do that again, dip it down, grab a V, pull it through, that's 3. And you want to do that all the way along. I'll just do it with you. So there's 4. There's 5. There's 6. And there's 7. 8. 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so you should have the heel kind of scrunched up along this ridge now, all along this one. If you didn't grab a V and it doesn't look perfect, that's fine. It should look all right as long as it's tight. That's why I was saying when we were doing the turning of the heel, you should slip the first stitch. I neglected to do that a couple times because I was lost and confused in the heat of the moment. But if you would have slipped that first stitch, the V's would have been bigger and more noticeable, and thus easier to pick up when you're doing this. But it's okay if you didn't do that, because I definitely didn't do that, and my sock is going to turn out just fine. So we're going to continue knitting around, and finally what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the 10 stitches that were on these two needles here. So take a new needle, because you don't want to cram everything onto this big one here, and we're going to continue knitting around, and we're going to knit these 10 stitches off of this needle here, and when you grab those 10 off of that needle, we are going to keep the same needle, just discard this one for now, and we're going to knit the other 10 stitches off of the second needle also. So knit the 10 stitches. We're going to have a total of 20 stitches on this one needle now, and we're only going to have 2 needles for just a minute before we introduce another one. So knit all of these off, and these needles are going to be so happy that you're finally interacting with them after all this time. Knit them off, knit them off, and knit them off. So here is your disaster of a sock so far. You should have your heel and then the gusset, that's what it's called basically, the picked up stitches on the ridge, and then just 20 stitches here from the top of the sock. Now we're going to do the same thing we did over there with picking up the stitches along the ridge. To do that, just take your a new needle now. We're not going to cram everything onto this needle, and pick up the 11 stitches on the ridge, just like we did before, but with a brand new needle. So slip your needle through one of the V's that's along the ridge, and then do a knit stitch through them. So there's 1, we're going to pick up 11. So here's 2, here's 3, here's 4, almost, yes, there's 4, 5, 6. So again, this is kind of why you're supposed to be doing that slip stitch along the ridge, which I did not do because I am dumb. If you did the slip stitch, the V's would be much bigger and easier to pick up, but it's alright, it's too late now. A couple more, so 8. Here is 9. Here is 10. And I'm gonna just barely squeeze in 11 here. So there's 11. We're gonna continue knitting into the heel now, just 6 stitches. So that'll get us halfway down the heel. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then you're going to stop and straighten everything out. So now you should stop right in the middle of your heel. So half of your heel should be over here, half is here. And this is going to be the new beginning of your round. If you look at it from above, you should have 17 stitches on this first needle. This is needle 1. Then you should have 20 stitches here on your needle 2, and then another 17 stitches on needle 3 right here, and your yarn is right here. This is the middle center of your heel, so you've got this nice curve right here, and you're ready to start a new round. The pattern from here on out is going to be decreasing along this ridge, so you can bring the heel and form that kind of triangle shape that a sock has. So right now a sock is like this. Your foot would come in here, your heel would rest in here, and then your foot would come out this way. So we need to create kind of like this triangle thing here because your foot is going to thin out as it gets to the toes. So the pattern, just kind of an overview before I show you, so you're going to knit all the way around, and then we're going to decrease by 2 here, and then just knit 1 more, and then continue knitting all the way straight across these 20 right here. on this one, we're going to decrease right here and then knit all the way across. And you're just going to keep doing that until you have 10 stitches on needles 1 and needle 3. Okay? So, I mean, basically what you're going to be doing is decreasing here and decreasing here. To decrease at the corners, it's going to kind of create this kind of triangular pinch that is in a nice sock. If you didn't get that, that's totally fine. Just follow along with me. I promise you will be able to figure this out. So just keep knitting all the way to the end of this needle 1. So we're knitting 17 stitches, but we're going to stop right before we get to the end. These first ones might be a little difficult because these are the ones that you picked up from the ridge. So they might be a little tight, but that's all right. Just continue knitting until you get to the last 3 stitches. So here they are. Last 3 stitches here on my left hand needle. We are going to combine these 2 stitches, so knit 2 together. They're very tight because I picked them up from the ridge. Knit 2 together and knit them off. You have 1 more stitch left. Knit that one off as well. And then take your new needle and turn your work. We're at the top of the sock now, or the top of the foot, I guess, with these 20 stitches. And you're going to knit all the way straight across. You're not going to have to decrease or anything like that on this needle. So knit 20 stitches. Knit all the way across those 20. Take my new needle and we're going to turn the work again. And we're on this next set of 17 stitches. And for this one, you're going to decrease first instead of waiting to the end of the row, because the end of the row here is the middle of the heel. We don't want to decrease there. We want to decrease right here, the first ones. So to do that, you're going to just knit 1. And then you're going to do a decrease, but it's going to be, oh gosh, I don't even know how you explain it. A left-hand decrease, basically. The terminology in the knitting world is SSK. So you basically slip, slip, and then you knit them together. So take 2 stitches, take it, slip it off as if you're going to knit it. So dip it down through there and slip it off, but don't do anything with it. Then do it to another one, slip it off. So you've grabbed 2. Then take your left-hand needle and stick it back in here as if you were going to purl them. This is where it gets tricky. But now you're going to knit them instead. So grab through there. That's how you SSK. I'll show you one more time, actually, just to be a little bit slower. So we knit 1, grab the second stitch as if you're going to knit it, but don't do anything with it, just slip it off, and then grab another one, slip it off, and then take your left-hand needle, slip it into here as if you're going to purl them together, and then you've got your right-hand needle along the back side, and then just knit those off. Cool. So now you've decreased, basically. It's a fancy way of decreasing. And then just continue knitting along the way. That's called an SSK. Whenever you see a pattern that calls for a decrease by doing SSK, it just means slip, slip, knit. So you're slipping off 2 stitches and then you're knitting them together. What it's doing is it's basically flipping the direction of the stitches, which I will get into in another video. You're basically just changing the direction of the decrease, which is going to create a reverse triangle. So we're going to knit all the way back down. And stop. We're back at the midpoint of the heel. For the next round, we're just going to knit all the way through. Don't worry about decreasing or anything like that. We're just going to build it back up for one more row of plain knitting. So knit all the way around. I'm going to do my fast forward magic and then show you what to do next. After that round of just plain knitting, you should be back here at the middle of the heel once again, ready to do another round of decreasing, and you should notice that things are getting a little more tight. So the rest of the pattern is going to follow that. You're going to knit down to here, decrease, knit all the way across these 20, decrease at the start of this one, and then knit there, and then do another round of straight knitting, and then do the decrease round again. So knit, decrease here, knit, decrease here with the SSK, and then knit, and then do another whole round of knitting. And you're going to stop doing that once you have only 10 stitches on each needle. So this needle should have 10, and this needle should have 10 stitches at the end of it. Right now, each needle has 16 stitches, so you're going to decrease for a couple more rounds until you get to 10 on each side. So at the end, it'll look like 10, 20, and 10. So I'm on my second round of decreasing, so I'm going to just kind of fast forward through all of this, I think, and I'll show you what it looks like once I have 10 stitches, once I've decreased down to 10 stitches at the end. A lot of people don't like the fast forwarding. They've said it's kind of confusing, but I mean, you get the basic pattern. I've told you it. So if you need to see one of the steps again, or you want to see the SSK again, honestly feel free to rewind it or look at one of my smaller videos that is just like a knitting tip where I kind of go over that specific thing. But if I showed you this entire process, just me knitting here, it would be way too long of a video. But I will show you this decrease right here since I'm here. So this is my second round of decreasing. Here's 3 stitches. I'm just going to knit these two guys together here. Things are just very tight right now. I don't know why. This one doesn't want to decrease. Gosh, you hear that squeak? That's awful sound. So knit these two together and then pull it off and knit one more stitch. Cool, we've decreased to 15 now. Turn it over, we've got the 20 stitches. We're going to knit all the way across here. I promise you, when I'm actually knitting like on my own and not in front of a camera, my yarn doesn't squeak as much as it does in these videos. Because my hands I don't want to say my hands get sweaty, but they get, okay, they do, I guess they do get kind of sweaty. But because I'm holding things so tight and I'm holding the knitting in such an awkward position for the camera that it's just not a fun way to knit. It's not a relaxing thing. But when I'm knitting on my own, my work is much neater, and it's definitely not as tight, and it's definitely not as squeaky and difficult to get the stitches off. Just take my word for it. So I've knit all the way across these 20 stitches. Take the needle now, and now we can do that SSK again on this needle. So let's do the SSK once again. You're going to knit the first one. Don't even bother doing that. It's just going to be a normal knit always. knit the first one, and then do the SSK. So slip, slip, bring back in your left one as if you were going to purl them, and then knit them off out through the back side. That's your SSK decrease. And then continue knitting down along this row. Okay? So now you've seen that decrease row again a second time. I am for sure going to leave you now and just fast forward to the end. After this round, I'm just going to do a plain knit round and then another decrease round, then a plain knit round, then another decrease round, then a plain knit round, then another decrease round, until we end up with 10 stitches on needles 1 and 3 and just 20 stitches on needle 2. All right? All right. All right, now I've decreased a couple more rows, and now I have 10 stitches, still have my 20 stitches here on top, and 10 stitches here, and this is what it looks like. Look, if you hold it to the side, now it's starting to actually look like a sock. Here is the nice little cuff, comes down to a nice heel with a perfect little curve right here, and then we've got this nice little triangle where we've got a mixture of the decreases that I've been doing here and then this new direction from when we turned the heel. All right, now it's starting to make a little more sense, hopefully, now that we're actually almost finished. So for now, what you need to do is you just need to keep knitting and around, all the way around, just not even decreasing at all. Just keep knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting until you get the length of the sock you want. You can actually stick your foot in it now, stick your toes out through here, and just keep knitting until you get the desired length of the foot that you want. So I'm going to leave you with that for now, and I will meet you over in part 2 of this video, where I'll show you how to finish off everything, create the curve for the toes, and then just finish the whole sock, because I know this video is really long right now. So keep growing this to the desired length, and then I will meet you back here with part 2 to finish off the sock.